So again, different countries do things differently, which is an obvious statement, but I mean, it's an important one to make. So even just in, might be little things. If you look at the difference between China and Australia, so in China, um, they tend to start college or university at a different age. You know, in the UK, they have this work-based training available during secondary school. In the US, which is pretty similar to Canada, we follow another kind of system. So when we're looking at these different kind of schools, and again, specifically secondary schools, the first is a college preparatory school, which is essentially very similar to our high school in terms of how they're structured and what they teach. These are designed to prepare students for a post-secondary education, whether that's college or university. Pretty straightforward. But there's a key difference here in that college preparatory secondary schools do not include music or phys ed because these are considered like extra. They're not considered necessary to prepare a student for post-secondary education. And isn't that interesting? Because in Canada and the US, we're so used to constant complaints about how we've become too focused on core subjects without enough attention or funding being allocated to the arts. We need more music classes in schools, more art classes, more drama, all of that. We have people conducting research about the benefits of an arts inclusive education and how it contributes to the development of more well-rounded people. But in education systems with a choice of high schools, such as in many European countries, a college prep school specifically excludes the arts and everybody's fine with it. Another kind of secondary school is a vocational school. And in these, the adolescent learns the skills necessary for a specific occupation, not a profession, an occupation. So maybe they want to be a hairstylist or an air conditioning technician or something in healthcare or some other hands-on field. The emphasis is on learning something that's hands-on. A professional school is different because these are focused specifically on training people to be professionals. A teacher, something like dentistry or nursing or something like that. So these are preparing people to likely receive much more education. And your text mentions something else that some countries also have. They might also have a really broad apprenticeship system. So we have that here, but in not quite the same way. When somebody in a secondary school becomes involved in an apprenticeship program, this means they attend school part-time and spend the other half learning their profession in an actual workplace, which sounds very similar to our co-op programs, except for a few things. This wouldn't just be for a few months, and this is related to a very, very specific occupation. You know, often for our co-op programs, students are placed wherever they can find a place to put them. And the focus is on general work experience, not actually apprenticing with somebody or apprenticing somewhere. An apprenticeship involves following and studying somebody who has already mastered the trade, a carpenter, a plumber, a mechanic. So before we go any further, I want you to think about yourself and what you would have chosen if we had this kind of system here in Canada. What do you think you would have chosen, or what do you think your parents would have encouraged you to choose? And then I want you to think about it as an adult, but then think about what you would have done back then at 14 or 15. And think about if you would have been able to make an informed, solid decision about what you wanted to spend your work life doing as an adult at that age. This is a big drawback of having a secondary system with three main options, because this means that you have to make a important decision at a very young age. You're not a really little kid, but at the same time, you're certainly not an adult. How well do you think you would have done making a decision that very literally could directly affect you for the rest of your life? That's really significant. For myself, I really doubt I would have had the maturity to make a good, solid decision. Now, it isn't like students just go to school one day and are told to pick one of the options. Several factors are taken into account. Just like in Ontario, when a student in grade 8 has to pick their courses for grade 9, which means choosing between the academic or applied stream. We take into account what their grades have been like and if they struggle a lot. We take into account what their interests are. Their parents will probably be involved as well, and the school guidance counselor. It's the same in choosing what kind of secondary school a student wants to attend. And just like in Ontario, a high school student can switch from the applied to the academic stream if they want. A student can switch from one kind of school to another. Now, they might need to do some extra things in order for that to be accomplished, but it can be done. Now, we haven't always had this system in Ontario. It's actually pretty new. When the academic applied distinction was first introduced in 1999, it was done with the purpose of ending streaming, although we still use that word. Streaming meant that in your first year of high school, or actually in grade 8, you had to choose either the advanced or basic stream. That's what they were called. These are just less politically correct terms for academic or applied. So using the advanced or basic distinction, a student had to be completely 100% in one stream only. All basic courses or all advanced courses. You couldn't mix and match, and you had to make that choice in grade 8. And as a result of this, the domino effect was that secondary students were streamed into either a college or university track. And this system was widely criticized for disproportionately placing low-income students into the college track and higher income students into the university track. Now, the new system we have now of applied and academic courses in grade 9 and 10, which most of you are probably familiar with, it's like the same system exists, but it's been tweaked because it allows students more leeway in grade 9 and 10. During grade 9 and 10, it's possible for you to take courses at both levels, not 100% academic or 100% applied. So you could take academic math in grade 9 and 10, but for English, take the applied course. Or take academic English with applied science. So students will have more options in the choice of courses, which means they can choose more specifically for their own interests. And in addition, they won't have to make a binding decision as early as grade 8 regarding what direction they want to head in. It won't be until grade 11 or 12 that they're really locked into one direction, because that's when they need to select what are called destination-based courses. That's the term we use in Ontario. Meaning for grade 11 and 12, you select the courses that will determine whether you go to college or university, what your destination will be. Now, this sounds like a good idea, doesn't it? It sounds like a smart idea. Instead of expecting students and their parents to make a major decision as early as grade 8. And it sounds like it should have an effect in a positive way on disproportionately sending low-income students into the applied stream. But it hasn't been completely successful because, for example, a recent study from the Toronto District School Board found that 92% of students from the highest incomes took the majority of their courses as academic, compared to only 56% of students from the lowest income. So we still have a disproportionately high number of low-income students in the applied stream. In other words, there's still a very strong link between students from lower income families and the selection of applied courses. So overall then, when we first look at the secondary school system, that includes different options of the kinds of schools for students to choose from, which is common in Europe. It seems completely different from our own, and it is different. But on the other hand, in a more general sense, I see at least some similarity with our comprehensive secondary school system, and that we also have students make choices in grade 8 that might affect the direction of their life in a significant way. We just do it in terms of an academic or applied stream. Now, your text brings up a good point, and that is, how does the exact time that an adolescent has to make this decision affect their decision? So what I mean is, if they have to make a decision about what kind of secondary school they attend by age 12, compared to if they make the decision at 14, compared to if they make the decision at 16. And it might seem on the surface that there's not a lot of difference here. It's only a year or two. How much effect can that have? Well, it makes quite a bit of difference because so much development occurs during adolescence, especially cognitively. Our thought processes go through very accelerated development during this stage of life, as does our emotions. So yes, a year or two can make a big difference when it comes to our perceptions, our level of maturity, our approach. Your text cites a specific study to demonstrate this, and what it does is it compares the secondary school system in France and Finland because they're quite different. In France, at age 13, students are required to make a decision about their educational path and thus their occupational path. And this is much younger than in Finland. So in France, by age 13, you're streamed into a particular kind of school. At age 16, they have to make another decision where they choose between 5 more specific academic streams, 16 technical programs, or a vocational school. This is much, much younger than in Finland. Age 13 in Finland, you're in a comprehensive high school. You're still all together. It's 3 years later at 16 when they have to choose an upper secondary school that's either more academic in nature or more vocational in nature. But even then, they don't have to get really specific until they're finished high school. So it's when they graduate at high school that they're expected to choose an occupation similar to us. So this is very different from France. And what kind of effect does this have? Being able to make the final decision much earlier or later about what you want to do? Well, it means you're going to have a much better, a much clearer idea about what you want to do at a much earlier phase of your life. But it's really difficult to say which approach is better, isn't it? And we all grew up attending a particular kind of education system, and we're just used to the way our society handles it. As an adult looking back, when do you think you would have been prepared to make a well-informed, well-rounded decision that really took into account all the necessary factors it should? Well, it's hard to say. In my job, working at a university, and I also teach at the college level, unless I'm speaking to an education student who is there specifically to go to teachers college, it really is the norm for students to tell me that they have no idea what they want to do after their degree is completed. It's not unusual in any way at all. It is the norm that when I ask them why they chose their major, they tell me because they had an interest in it, but not to mention anything about future employment. And I've had many students tell me that because they're not sure what they want to do after their degree is finished, they're just going to stay in school. So they go to graduate school for a master's degree or teacher's college, or they do an extra year and get a combined degree with 2 majors. So it's really common for not a lot of thought to be given to an actual occupation, to becoming qualified for an actual occupation, even with all the debt they go into to get this education. And something else I've noticed in about the last 6 to 7 years is the questions or lack of them at university fairs from students themselves. At Nipissing, twice a year, we have a university fair on campus when prospective first-year students, so people who are thinking of attending the next year, come to campus and check it out, usually with their parents. We usually have one during March break, like during the March break of high schools, and frankly, I can't remember when the second one is, but I think it's in the summer. And there'll be talks scheduled for each department, campus tours, residence tours. They can meet with academic counselors, financial aid, anything else you can think of. All of that so they can see firsthand what the university is like. There's also a department fair where every department has a table, usually in the gym, and people can wander around to meet more professors directly and ask them questions all in one spot. In the last 6 to 7 years, it's not unusual at all for parents to directly ask me, what kind of job can my son or daughter get with a degree in sociology? What will their job prospects be like? A very practical answer, very practical question, and I always give the same answer, which is honest. I can't give you an answer that with a sociology degree, you're qualified to do X. It isn't like you have a nursing degree and you're qualified to be a nurse, or a teaching degree and you're qualified to be a teacher, because it isn't specific like that. But that can actually be very positive, because with a degree in Soc that's more general in nature, you're qualified for a wider variety of occupations. Stats Canada specifically recruits in sociology departments because they have a very strong background in research and statistics. Anything requiring a background in research or stats, like business, would like this degree a lot. A lot of graduates go into teaching, a lot go into fields related to criminology and social work. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up, what's interesting about this is the demeanor of the parents asking the questions and the demeanor of the prospective students who are not asking anything. The parents are usually very focused. They clearly know ahead of time what they want to ask. Questions are not occurring on the spur of the moment. And you can tell they're really paying attention to everything and everyone. They're thinking ahead. They're not just focused on the next 3 to 4 years of the degree. On the other hand, not all, but the vast majority of prospective students are clearly overwhelmed. They don't seem to know what to look at first, so they're trying to take everything in at once, which overwhelms them more. And it's not unusual at all for them to not have a single question for anyone. I have never once had a prospective student ask me about the potential for employment, not once. And these are students who are typically 17, 18, maybe even turning 19. I've even had parents say to their kids, "Don't you have any questions? This is about what you're going to do, not me." And if they're still figuring things out at the end of high school, what would have happened if they lived in another country where they had to make major decisions about their future at an even younger age? So again, it's difficult to say that one approach is better than the other. We have a comprehensive secondary school system in Canada. Everybody's provided a lot of choice through junior high and high school instead of having to make a decision early on. But this also means that in Canada, it's common that even by the end of high school, young people have little to no idea about what they want to do.